been a long while since I made a YouTube video, so that means it can only be one thing that's impressed me lately, and that's either a camera or a computer. And in this case, it's the M4 Mac Mini. I also just love the irony of large man, little devices. This thing is incredibly small, which is sick, and I'm super impressed by this redesign. For beginners, I didn't get the base model. I upgraded this to 24 gigs and of RAM and 512 gigs of storage just because I do more video editing these days, and so I thought a little bit of a bump would help me. I understand a lot of people aren't in a position to like upgrade uh, those extra $400, but if you can, I think it's a worthy investment, especially if you're creative. I think bumping up those two specs are going to be huge if you're making stuff all day or for a living. Also, if you know about the Mac Mini already, you know that you have to bring your own peripherals. I have some. I wasn't worried about it. So for me, it was just a flat purchase of the computer. I also sold my iMac, so I did upgrade to another monitor, which has been sick. Maybe I'll review that. It's a Samsung Odyssey G7, the 28 inch. It's been pretty nice so far. And so that's my second monitor option at the moment. There's also a few accessories that I added just because I knew I needed to upgrade a little bit just to get my machine right. That includes like a hub that has an SSD enclosure, and I'll discuss that in a little bit as well. And even though it's only been a few days, just a little over a week, I can confidently say I'm in love with this machine. This thing has been a beast. It's handling a lot of the things that I'm doing really, really well. So well that, I don't see myself updating this thing because I don't need to update my gear for a while. So I'll discuss a little bit more about that. Kind of just get into the gist of everything that this machine's done so far and how it's impressed me and how I feel about going forward with this machine. So let's talk about this redesign because I think that was kind of like the leading point of this computer coming out was everyone was excited about how small it is, and it is tiny, and I think that is worth addressing. But there's also some highlights, even though they shrunk down the size. There's a lot of positives about things that they've done. As a photographer, videographer, content creator, I absolutely need a lot of ports, and so going from the 4 ports that I even had on my iMac, going to 5 and having the two in the front, that's been huge because I have to have ports, whether I need an external display, in case I need a card reader, anything that I might need. It's great to just have more port selection, and I think they really nailed it with this port layout. And even though my iMac had two Thunderbolt and 4 overall ports, uh, that was great. But having 5 and where they're positioned, I think is major. It just gives more flexibility, which I think is something we all love. Even though my iMac having to reach around the back of the computer, smudging it was kind of gross. So having this, like, you can just plug in anything within arm's reach. That's a pretty sick feature that we didn't have, or unless you have a Mac Studio, which I did not. Um, this just gives you so much more flexibility in the long run, and just like being able to have your port set in the back and not have to really remove anything unless you're shifting the computer from point A to point B. Just to touch further on the port situation, there's a lot of docks and hubs that have USB-A built in. There's also docks and hubs that are just way more flexible. For instance, I've been using this one that I got on Amazon. It has USB-A, has a card reader. Um, it has more video ports, which don't necessarily apply to me, but it also has an SSD enclosure. So it's not the fastest thing, but it does let you add more storage in case you need to. I've been finding 1 terabyte drives, 1 terabyte SSDs for about $50. You can find 2 terabyte ones for around $100, maybe a little bit more, but it's definitely a great option if you want to upgrade your storage without spending the extra $200 or whatever it is to upgrade from Apple. As a creative, my workflow is very important to me, so having just a better selection of ports for me and for what I do specifically is great. I understand wanting an SD card slot because I feel like a lot of us shoot on SD cards, but I also shoot on CFast Express cards, so I have to have a card reader anyway. So for me, it wasn't like a big selling point or a big disappointment, I guess, that we didn't get an SD card slot because I would have had to plug something in anyway. And so for me, it was all good, but I certainly understand like why people would want that, and I'm sure a lot of people see the benefit of it in the Mac Studio, and and the MacBook Pros that do have it. And for me as a creative, I feel like it's only right that I judge this computer by what I use it for. And as a creative, I think that this is like perfect for like 90% of creatives. It's going to do a lot. It's certainly going to hold its own when you're trying to work on bigger projects. I know it has for me, even though I've been doing some like light video work on it. Um, the video is looking great. It's playing well. The playback's great, and so I haven't had any issues with anything that I've done in my like day-to-day workflows. And for my day-to-day work, I'm a photographer full time and I freelance full time, and so I do a lot of photo editing. And compared to my M1 iMac and my other Mac Minis of the past, this thing is so much faster. Like I don't really time my exports. I've just never done benchmarking like that. But certainly when I'm working on a project, or exporting a project, I'll kind of just like take a drink of water, check my phone, do all the little things in between, and it'll take a little bit. But usually with this Mac Mini, I'm just like checking my phone for a couple minutes, and the thing's already done, and I'm like ready to upload in a few minutes. So same thing for video. It's very quick when it's rendering. I haven't really done any graphics work on it yet, but I'm certainly feeling like the speed and the playback of the videos is kind of just like breezing through. And so that part has been super impressive, and I'm loving it for that. And so I think this computer is just going to last me a long time, which is like gives me a certain sense of comfortability that I really like when I'm making a purchase. And also, I think there's something to be said about how small this is. Like, if you are a creative that travels a lot and you need to take something on the road with you and don't feel like taking a laptop, I feel like this is actually a pretty good choice. This is definitely going to fit in a backpack or a little case, and you're going to be able to move around with it. Maybe you have like a little portable monitor, and you can travel with a keyboard and a mouse. Like, I don't think it's unreasonable that you can find like a 15-inch monitor and move from place to place with this thing if you don't want to have two separate computers. I feel like that's a totally reasonable thing, and you can find all those things for like less than $100 sometimes. So that's also an option with this computer, which I don't think a lot of like these mini computers have, like this computing power and like this flexibility. I really don't. Maybe I'm a little bit of a fanboy, but I think this thing is like so capable. For myself, I also bought like a portable monitor, like a 15-inch one, and so planning to make a video and just take it to a coffee shop and see how reasonable it is for me to move from place to place, work on a project, and see if it's actually portable and make sure I don't look ridiculous. I think it is going to work out. Just based off like having traveled with a Mac Mini before in the bigger form factor, and it still worked, and it was still like a really great setup. And so I'm like eager to try that out because I think that'll work. I'm also going on this trip in January. I might also take my Mac Mini to that. And so I'm just going to experiment and see what this thing can do, and maybe this is like an actually a really portable machine that we're kind of underestimating as a desktop. And thinking about how I wanted to address this Mac Mini and why it's different and why it feels so much better, um, there's certainly changes, physical and performance wise, uh, that are going on, and they're great. But I also don't think it's that much. I just think that they've been really good at making these like great steps, like little by little, and every iteration has just been like, okay, you're doing great. Like, what are we doing now? And that's what I've been loving about this Mac Mini, is that it definitely feels like a step up from what we've gotten, and it makes you excited about where we're going to get. But I mean, this computer should be great for years. Apple also just released Final Cut 11, which has been like their first like major release in a few years. I've been trying to fiddle with it. I'm certainly excited because I think any app that's optimized for Mac is going to perform better, and it's going to be faster, and certainly the things like Magnetic Mask are going to be impressive. But I'm sure that there's current users right now that are really happy with it and are experimenting, and so I'll let them talk about that. I don't think I have enough to say, but it is really exciting that there's just a lot of step ups that Apple's making, especially for creatives at this point. Lastly, and most importantly, I just think that the value proposition with this Mac Mini has skyrocketed. Just getting a new design, a new form factor, seeing what the performance is like, having like this bump up in the spec, going 16 gigabyte base model, and which seems to feel like it's been enough so far. Like, that's huge. I think we're at an age where we're at a time where people just want more for their money, and this is directly affecting that, whether it's for Apple Intelligence or not. I don't plan on using that, but I certainly will reap the benefits of getting more RAM uh, for what I need. And so I'm like super happy about that as well. Now, I think the question that we all ask ourselves, which is a fair question when we're buying something, is this right for me? And honestly, I think that at this price, especially if you're a student, that this computer is an amazing bargain and that it's going to last you for a long time because you're just going to be able to do so much with it. It's so capable, and I think that's like the overarching theme of this computer is that it's so capable and it's going to be so productive for you that I don't think you can go wrong purchasing this thing, unless you do like unless you have some crazy workflows. But then at that point, you're probably well invested in the computer at this point anyway. It certainly helps that this is a tiny computer that you can accomplish so much with it. Like if you wanted to venture into new hobbies or learning new things, you can. And if you need to upgrade, well, that kind of just depends on you and what your needs are at the moment. Um, but I certainly think that being able to just like upgrade your external storage is going to be great. That way, you're not paying so much up front, and you can spend $200 and get like a 4 terabyte SSD, and then you should be set for a long time, depending on what your use case is. I will say, if you are a student and you're looking to spend $500 for a computer, 600 if you want to get like a little like Bluetooth keyboard, Bluetooth mouse, and like a cheap portable monitor or even just like a cheap monitor under $100. This is like a great computer for you, especially as a student. Like it's gonna nail all the tasks that you want it to do. I also think that there are a lot of people that are not a fan of Mac, and certainly in this tiny PC market that's growing, there's probably a lot of great options out there. I haven't really looked. I've been really happy with this, and I know I'm going to be happy with this. And being that it is such a tiny computer, there is a large amount of upside, and I think that's something to look forward to with this Mac Mini. Now that I've got this bug for making videos again and making YouTube videos, I'm definitely going to try to make more like the portable Mac Mini video. Maybe I'll make a video on this Osmo Pocket 3, which has been my go-to camera. It's been amazing so far. Even recording this video on it has been amazing. And so I think I'll have a lot more projects to come. And if you're into that, please subscribe, please comment, and hopefully we'll see you in a future video.